Welcome to this video, the 9 choirs of the divine will. In this video, we'll explore who are those who were in the 9 choirs and when will it be created. Let us begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. We've explored the 9 choirs previously in other videos, but we just touched upon them at that time. And just to make sure that everyone's familiar with them, we'd like to do a quick recap. So the 9 choirs are told to Luisa by Jesus in the following manner: "My daughter, just as I have the hierarchy of angels with 9 distinct choirs, so will I have the hierarchy of the children of the kingdom of my divine fiat. It will have its 9 choirs, and they will distinguish themselves from one another according to the varieties of beauties that they have acquired by knowing, some more, some less, the knowledges that pertain to my fiat." And that is found in volume 23, February 28th, 1928. And here Jesus makes the distinction to Luisa about the 9 choirs, that they will be distinguished by the number of knowledges that they have acquired. And Jesus further, in another excerpt, which I'll give you the volume for, volume 17, October 30th, 1924, he also says that the 9 choirs of angels have been distinguished in like manner, and that the highest choir has the most knowledges, and the lower choirs have less. Now, it's important to remember that in our video, one of our Divine Will Drill videos regarding knowledges, we went into detail regarding how knowledge is acquired. And knowledge is acquired by living in the Divine Will. Living in the Divine Will and the acquisition of knowledge of it are corresponding. Each complements the other. So as you live in the Divine Will, it gives you the opportunity to gain more knowledge of it. And consequently, that more knowledge allows you to live more and more within the Divine Will and to advance in it. Now let us continue. Who are they in the 9 choirs of the Divine Will? Let us read this excerpt. "Therefore those who possess all the knowledges will form the highest choir, and according to their knowledge, so will the different choirs be formed. However, all those who have acquired these knowledges, whether in full or in part, will have the noble title of children of my kingdom." And that is in volume 23, February 28th, 1928. And the important sentence in here is regarding who will be in the 9 choirs. It's whether they have lived in the Divine Will in full or in part. They will have the noble title of children of my kingdom, and therefore will be part of the 9 choirs of the Divine Will. At first glance, it would seem that the 9 choirs may be associated with only those who were fortunate enough to live in the 4th degree of the Divine Will. However, this excerpt clearly states that those who live in full or in part in the Divine Will, and that means that anyone who lives in the 2nd degree would also be eligible to be in these 9 choirs. and just wish to show an illustration. So those familiar with Elijah's Cloak channel, they've probably seen this depiction of the sun and the four degrees of the divine will. And we wish to show how the divine will, 4 degrees, corresponds with the 9 choirs. Now, Jesus does not explicitly say that it looks like this. However, we do know from discussions regarding the 4 degrees of Jesus with Luisa that the first degree is not considered to be part of the kingdom of the divine will. In other words, that begins at the 2nd degree. And in the 2nd degree, the 3rd degree, and the 4th degree, those degrees are considered to be those who live in the divine will. Now, if you're not that familiar with the 4 degrees, we covered it in the first video on Elijah's Cloak channel. I welcome you to take a look at that. It's rather long, it's 50-some minutes, so give yourself some time. Now, Jesus does not tell Luisa that the top 3 choirs will be or correspond to the 4th degree of the divine will, but we are given some hints. And also, I'm relying upon the love of beauty and symmetry that God has to say that just fits perfectly. Now, is it possible that maybe the 4th degree is only the highest choir of the 9 choirs? Yes, it is possible that may be the case. And as we looked at the 4 degrees in the video that I mentioned earlier, we discussed the differences. We would touch upon the differences between someone who entered a degree and someone who was at its end and getting ready to move into the next degree, of how big of a difference that is. And that would neatly correspond to the idea of having 3 choirs in each degree. In other words, someone who's at the beginning of the degree, and someone who's in the middle, and someone who's towards its end. Now, as we discussed in the 4 degrees, these are categories, these degrees. Within the degree, there are many gifts and many beauties and many uniquenesses. But nevertheless, it fits very nicely with these 9 choirs. But let's take a look at the other topic that we wish to discuss, and that is when these 9 choirs will be formed. And I'll read the excerpt from volume 35, August 9th, 1937. After she will have formed them on earth, she will take them to heaven, surrounding herself with a new hierarchy, the newborn in the divine fiat. So what's important is, in here, is that they'll be formed on earth first, and then taken to heaven. So that's an important context to understand these 9 choirs. And there's a second excerpt that gives us more insight. My daughter, my celestial mama, was the first who occupied the first place in heaven as daughter of the supreme volition. And because she was the first, she has around herself the place for all the children of the supreme fiat. So around the Queen of Heaven, many empty places can be seen that can be occupied by no one else but her copies. And since she was the first from the generation of my will, the kingdom of the fiat will also be called Kingdom of the Virgin. And that's from volume 20, November 10th, 1926. And the important note here is that Jesus tells Luisa that her Blessed Mother is at the head of this hierarchy of the 9 choirs, and that the 9 choirs consist of many empty places. In other words, these are places that are waiting for those children of the kingdom of the divine will to occupy them. Those who are living within the 4 degrees, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th degree of the divine will. And those who will be called into the choirs, the 9 choirs of the divine will. And one other piece of information I'd like to go over is this other excerpt from volume 23, again, February 28th, 1928. And here we're given some insight regarding when these choirs have started. So, Jesus mentioned in the previous excerpt that our Blessed Mother is at its head. So technically, we can say that these 9 choirs are started with our Blessed Mother. But what about the empty places? Those are what we need to concern ourselves with right now when we talk about when will it be? When will these choirs be formed? And Jesus gives us another hint here. And do you think that the memory of Father de Francia, his many sacrifices, and desires to make my will known to the point of initiating the publication will be extinguished in this great work of my divine fiat, only because I brought him with me to heaven? No, no. On the contrary, he will have the first place. In other words, he is saying that he will have the first place in the 9 choirs. So as those people begin to live in the divine will, they will be the ones, as we've just illustrated, to form the 9 choirs of the divine will. Now, Jesus also tells Luisa at the time that there's many empty places. And those who are living in the divine will have been very few. And it has taken time for the work of Luisa, the Book of Heaven, and her other writings to germinate. And as they are accepted and they're loved, more and more people will begin to live in the divine will and to occupy these places. And you can just see that accelerating. You see it especially today, when there's so much darkness in this world, yet you have the bright light of those living in the divine will. And as that light increases, so will the divine will's reign upon this world occur. And we will then see the triumph of our Blessed Mother's Immaculate Heart. I want to thank you for watching, and God bless.